Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, something very interesting has happened today. Something that's never really happened in the entire history of Magic the Gathering. Now, and I'm not just talking about the Pioneer format, although that is the main thrust of what we're going to be talking about. I mean overall in the history of Magic bannings. So we have just one card to talk about today in terms of banning. It's specifically for the Pioneer format, and the card itself is Veil of Summer. So let's get the card up on the screen so we can both enjoy its beautiful artwork and talk about what the card does. Then we'll go over the announcement, and then we'll talk about how this is the first time something like this has happened in Magic history. So Veil of Summer is 1 green. It's an instant that says, draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can't be countered this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and black until end of turn. So both you and your permanents, not just your creatures, all of your permanents can't be targeted by black or blue spells. Overall, this card has a lot going on. And as I mentioned, the artwork is very nice. I like this like swirling defensive shield of leaves. This is a very cool looking card. Overall, a very striking card. You get a lot for 1 mana. This is a powerful hoser card, and hosers are cards that specifically like screw over particular colors in Magic the Gathering. So let's take a look at what they had to say about why they banned it. And these bans actually go into effect tomorrow. They're having these bans hit the ground running real quick. So the announcement says, observing the evolution of the Pioneer format after last week's bans, we're generally seeing positive changes to the metagame. However, green-based aggro and ramp decks were still still remain overrepresented in the competitive metagame at the expense of mid-range and control. Therefore, we are banning Veil of Summer to better allow for natural metagame forces to provide counter pressure against these strategies. We expect this to increase incentive to play reactive strategies that will help keep the format in balance over the long term without fundamentally changing any of the diversity of decks currently available in Pioneer. We will follow up with further changes if needed next Monday, November 18th, but please note that the Pioneer update will take place that afternoon, separate from the regularly scheduled BNR update for all other formats. That upcoming 18th, November 18th, ban and restricted announcement, that's one that we are all waiting for, because we're going to get the question of, is Oko getting the boot, or are they going to ban around Oko? That is one of the big questions of the time that we are currently living in. We also want to highlight that we'll be aligning the tabletop and Magic Online effective dates going forward. This is actually a big change. In the past, we've held effective dates for tabletop games to prevent disruption of already planned tournaments. However, with the fast iteration for Pioneer, it makes more sense to align the dates to allow players to adapt and test quickly. So in the past, what they did was they held off on doing the update for Magic Online, and it would happen a little bit later. But from now on, it's going to be like, snap our fingers, cards gone on the same day. So starting tomorrow, you will no longer be able to use Veil of Summer. Veil of Summer's last hurrah is today. So this is a very interesting scenario that we find ourselves in, my friends, because as I mentioned, Veil of Summer is a hoser card, right? Like you break it down, and the fact of the matter is this can essentially be considered a counter spell that draws you a card, and it all costs 1 mana. There have been people who've compared this to Cryptic Command. Now, let's be fair, it's not a Cryptic Command. Cryptic Command does have 4 different options. One of the most sweet choices on Cryptic Command, though, is to counter a spell and draw a card. And Cryptic Command costs 3 blue and a colorless. So you're paying 4 mana to get the same effect. Veil of Summer can very easily be a counter target spell and draw a card, because it can be considered a counter spell in terms of spells you control can't be countered this turn. That means if, for example, somebody played a counter spell, like you cast a spell, somebody goes to counter spell it. In response, you play Veil of Summer. Now, technically, you're not actually countering their spell, but by making your spell uncounterable, you've nullified their counterspell, which is the next closest thing to counter it, and it's reasonable to consider it being countered. Also, the hexproof, because I mean the anti-countering works really well against blue. The hexproof part works really well against black, also blue too, but really well against black. If you have something like, for an example from standard, if you have like a murderous rider or just the murder spell, which bam, destroy target creature, then all of a sudden in response, give my creatures hexproof, and voila, your spell is actually countered because it has no legal targets. And on top of that, because you either cast that counter spell or cast that destruction spell, you get to draw a card. Your opponent gets to draw a card. Whoever's casting the Veil Summer gets to draw a card. So this really does act similarly to a cryptic command in the draw a card, counter a spell mode. It really does act very similarly to that, which is crazy for 1 mana. What's also crazy is how much green is getting banned. Green's power level has gone up so much. Guys, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I started Magic back in 1994, and green was my favorite color back then, but it was a weak color. At best, it was a splashable color. You weren't going to win tournaments playing mono green. It just wasn't going to happen unless it's an absolute fluke, right? Because green just was not up to the power level. So it's kind of crazy to see how much green is getting banned. In Pioneer specifically, we've had 4 cards banned. 3 of those cards are green cards. So you're looking at a situation where 75% of all Pioneer bans are green, which is crazy. Now, as for the historic part, and what I'm talking about has never happened before in Magic, this is a hoser card. There has never been a hoser card that has been ever banned in Magic the Gathering. It just hasn't happened. There's never been, or if you want to call them a color screw card, whatever you want to call it, there has never been a banning of a straight up color screw card. This is essentially, Veil of Summer is designed as a sideboard card. That's what it's designed for. Veil of Summer was never designed to be played main deck. This is a card you would play in your sideboard and board in for your second and third games. For a sideboard card to get a ban, that's pretty crazy. That's a testament to the power level of the card. So we have a situation where it's both a color hoser and a sideboard card getting the ban hammer. I find that fascinating. They have clearly pushed the power level of color hosers up a notch, and specifically green, because in all honesty, there's not much that I can think of that that is on this level. I mean, even if you look at like Aether Gust, because Aether Gust is not too shabby and uncommon, right? I mean, it lets you choose a spell or permanent that's red or green and put it on the top or bottom of the library. So, I mean, for 2 mana with Aether Gust, you're getting a pretty good deal. But it doesn't come close to Veil of Summer. Veil of Summer feels really strong at 1 mana. It feels like a spell that should be casted at like 2 mana. Like 3 mana feels like it probably would make it virtually almost unplayable. 2 mana feels like they might be getting the right spot for it. In all honesty, it's kind of hard to concept. This really does shut down black and blue so hard that maybe it's too pushed. You know what I mean? Like, it lets you draw a card as icing on the cake, but it literally makes all your spells uncountered for the entire turn, and then it gives you and your permanents hexproof. So it's protecting every permanent that you have on the board from their blue and black spells, and it also stops them from targeting you with discard or other effects as well. So overall, the power level of Veil of Summer is actually really, really high. They could have printed this at rare if we're being real with the power level that we're getting, and I'm not surprised to see it get banned. Now, what does this mean though? When we look at this, what does it mean for other formats? Are we going to see a ban like this happening in Standard? Is this leading? Some people are taking this as a sign that Oko's not going to be banned in Standard. I find that confusing, truthfully. I mean, if you thought Oko was going to get banned in Pioneer, well, Oko doesn't seem to be dominating Pioneer the same way that it's dominating Standard. So expecting an Oko ban in Pioneer at this juncture seems premature to me. It doesn't seem like it's a reasonable expectation. And I certainly don't understand how people got to the point of Veil of Summer getting banned in Pioneer equals Oko not getting banned in Standard? I don't get that. I'm curious to see if they're going to decide that Veil of Summer is also too strong for Standard. Are we going to see an upcoming Standard ban where Veil of Summer takes the hit, where Oko takes the hit, or are we going to have a situation where Oko is going to linger around for another full month while they ban around Oko? Interesting questions are being raised by this nonetheless. Either way, let me know about your opinions of this card. Do you feel, first of all, that it's too strong for a color hoser? Do you think this should have been printed at rare? Do you think it should cost more mana? Or do you think this is too much to give green in terms of shutting off abilities? I did a video recently talking about that Ashiok enchantment that lets you remove spells from the game instead of countering them. So is that sort of a situation where, well, if you can't have the Ashiok's version of exiling a spell instead of countering, you also shouldn't be able to have this level of blanket protection with an instant for green? I mean, in a way, it almost feels like green is moving outside of its wheelhouse. I mean, the card does feel green because green does give hexproof. Green does have cards that can't be countered. But the power level and the way the card functions almost makes it feel like it's not a green card to a degree. I don't know. Either way, let me know what you guys think. I'm genuinely interested in your opinions. We mentioned Oko. I've got some 3/3 elk shirts in my merch shop. Feel free to check those out. Other than that, I'll let you know I got another channel where I make fun and funny videos. You're welcome to come on over and hang out there. I'll put a link to it at the end of the video. And you know what? I'll link the Ashiok video as well, where I talk about how I do not like the Ashiok's Erasure enchantment that's coming up in Theros. I don't really feel like they should be doing things like that. And you can give me your opinion on that as well. So thanks for coming by, everybody. Big shout out to all my patrons and channel members. And remember, together, we are the 6th color of magic.